Hi, this is Jeandra LeBeauf here with the Boxing Channel. I'm joined, of course, by Al Bernstein, and for another installment of Hot Topics. We have 3 topics to talk with you today. Why don't we start with the latest War of the Roses that's happening with Andre Ward and Dan Goossen and their ongoing litigation. You know, what do you make of this? They started off with Andre Ward talking about his issues, citing the Muhammad Ali Act. Now we've changed gears, and Dan Goossen has now filed suit in turn, citing defamation. What do you think of their ongoing battles with each other?
Well, you mentioned War of the Roses, and for me, this is a painful situation. I've known Danny Goossen for 30 years. We've been friends for a long time. I have great regard for Andre Ward as a person and as a fighter. I find this to be one of the most painful episodes in boxing, period. And, you know, it started a while ago when Andre Ward wanted to get out of his contract with Dan Goossen, lost a couple of rounds in arbitration and in court, but has continued to try and get out of the contract. And the latest thing that created the anti-defamation, or the suit that Danny brought, was that there was a suggestion, as you point out, that he violated the Ali Act, and even suggesting there might be something criminal. So it's escalated, as you said, just like the War of the Roses. And for me, I think it's unfortunate for a couple of reasons. One, Andre Ward losing valuable time in his career, and it's creating just this distraction.
You know, what's disappointing is how it got to this point. One moment, we're all happy. Andre Ward's winning the Super 6 tournament. He signs a new contract with Dan Goossen, and then now here we are kind of going back and forth over what more does he feel that Dan Goossen could have been doing with his career that he already wasn't receiving?
Well, it's an interesting question. And, you know, I think Andre Ward, I guess, has felt during the course of it, he felt that maybe there weren't certain matches secured. He felt like his contract could have come to an end. There were a number of different issues. You know, you look at this and you can look at it from several different ways. If you look at it from Danny Goossen's point of view, well, the fights that were out there, we got you in the Super 6, that got you famous. Then we got you other fights, championship fights, whatever HBO was going to be available to give you after he moved from Showtime. And from Andre's standpoint, he'll say, well, we never quite got the big one, or we never got the one that we wanted so far, and maybe some other promoter could do that. And of course, there's always influences from other promoters. So it's a very tricky deal, but the one salient fact about it is it has escalated beyond where I think anyone thought it would.
Right, it's unfortunate since he's had such a promising career to see that it's turned out this point, but we'll stay tuned and see what the latest development is. Why don't we move on to a second hot topic, a happier subject. Finally, boxing fans will have a place to call home. The big 2014 Boxing Expo that will be happening in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Convention Center. You know, tons of vendors, tons of fighters, finally an opportunity for both sides of the fence and all of the other neighbors around to gather under one roof and spend some time with each other and give the fans what they want, all the fighters in one place.
Yeah, it's unique to boxing because boxing is, you know, I always call it laissez-faire capitalism run amok. There are no rules, there's nobody running it, so it's chaos. And one of the things that, for instance, the UFC has done in mixed martial arts is have their expos for the fans. And that's what the folks that are putting this on have attempted to do. It's September 13th. It's on the day of Mayweather-Maidana fight, so they're trying to get boxing fans that will be in town and be watching it to be a part of it. And what's nice is what you said. You have under one tent, you know, promoters, fighters, all the broadcasters. I'm going to be doing an autograph session out there, and there's going to be a lot of people there. And all the fans will have a chance to gather and do a day of boxing. I mean, you know, it's like a less nerdy Star Trek convention, you know? And I've been to Star Trek convention, so I can speak about the nerdiness of doing it. But it's just going to be a fun event.
And for hot topic number 3, why don't we do a little comparison with 2013 versus 2014 at this point? Last year, we just saw epic war after war, non-pay-per-view fights, and now in 2014, we're not quite at the same level as we were in 2013 in terms of competitive, entertaining fights. How do you match up the 2 years against each other at this point?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. In a way, it's unfair to compare, but in a way, it isn't. You know, 2013, in my opinion, was the best year boxing's had in 25 years. It was extraordinary. There were dozens, several dozen, great fights that you talked about, wars, fantastic matches, and you made the important point, not all pay-per-views. Many of them were fights that we could see on Showtime or HBO or ESPN or some other outlet. And that set the tone for what everyone thought was going to be a tremendous 2014. Well, the year got off to a slow start with not so many fights on TV. Then in the middle of the year, to add to all of it, there was the Golden Boy, Richard Schaefer, Al Heyman shakeup that impacted fights that could be made. And what we ended up with so far in 2013 are some very good fights. We've had, wars like Matisse and Molina, Euricus Gamboa and Terence Crawford, and several others, Guerrero Kamagai. We could mention a bunch of fights, and Maidana Mayweather, which was a very good pay-per-view. But what we haven't had is a consistent lineup of really good fights.
Yeah, we've seen the emergence this year of a promoter like Mike Tyson making his transition as a promoter who's been doing some really good cards on the Fox network. So it's good to see a little diversity with the boxing promoters too.
Yeah, that's a positive. Thanks for bringing up the positive, because that's an example of somebody who's trying to make the most of his opportunity and has, for the most part, done so. And maybe that's, there are positive things to glean from this year. And also, the other thing is there's a quarter of the year left to go. We're hoping that Maidana Mayweather will be an interesting fight. I personally have higher hopes for the Algieri-Pacquiao fight than some folks do. I think that's going to be actually a pretty interesting fight. And of course, there are a number of fights on the docket for the last quarter. So we can keep our fingers crossed and hope that 2014 as at least somewhat representative of the progress boxing has made, not just last year, but for the last several years.
Yeah, definitely. We'll hope to continue on the momentum that boxing's been having over the last few years. So once again, this has been an installment of Hot Topics. I'm Jeandra LeBeauf with Al Bernstein for the Boxing Channel.